Hey everybody, it is Gordon Majak here, back with another episode of Timeless Pop, Rock, and Soul. And today it is Soul with a capital S. Get it? Some of you out there know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? We are going back to 1972, and there is so much I can say about that year. It was just another amazing, incredible, ridiculous year. If I was to go down the list of all the great artists and all the great albums and all the great songs, it's just absurd. What a classic year for pop, rock, and soul music, right? Just one great thing after another. And so for me back there in 1972, being 14 years old, I kind of had the best of all worlds because I was still young enough that I could listen to the AM radio side of the dial and get all that cool top 40 stuff and kind of hear what the mainstream of culture was listening to on the radio. But that's also about the time that my 14-year-old self started listening to the FM side of the radio dial. And that is where I heard such a greatly expanded variety of artists and styles and genres and sounds. And I was soaking it up in real time and loving every minute of that musical education that I was getting back there. And I was way, way, way into music already, even as a 14-year-old growing up there in the early 70s, right? Well, and I thought I had heard, even by 1972, at the age of 14, I thought I had heard just about everything there was out there, right? But man, was I wrong, because that is when, 1972, spring and summer to be specific, that is when this album came out. This is, of course, the legendary second album by Tower of Power, Oakland's finest, right there. Tower of Power and the Bump City Record. A huge album, a huge moment in the history of, certainly in timeless R&B and soul and funk, if not the whole wider musical shebang, right? Just a epic album there for Tower of Power. So there I was, and here we are. Let's remember this. This is the song. I don't even know. This was their big breakthrough there in 72. And no, we are not going to listen to the puny little 3-minute and 35-second version. We are going to hear the full-on album version here, about 5.5 minutes. But this is the single there for Tower Power on Warner Brothers Records in the spring of 72. You're still a young man. Now, here's the other cool thing, yet another cool thing about the year 1972. Not only was it just an amazing year in music in general, not only was it an incredible year for me as a teenager, just soaking up all this great music that was out there, but sort of an under the radar thing. You know, by 1972, the concept of a horn section within the confines of a pop, rock, soul, or even a jazz band was a widely accepted and certainly very favorably accepted idea, right? You could go all the way back to Ray Charles and the early days of James Brown and his fabulous Flames, and into the I had to write all this down. There were so many that I could think of. This is just off the top of my head earlier. Ray Charles, James Brown, Memphis Soul, the Atlantic Soul sound, the Stax Volt Soul sound, the Motown stuff, so much of that had horns on it, the Philly Soul, there's brass all over that stuff, Sly and the Family Stone was even still going there in 1972, and of course over on the pop and rock side, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and Chicago had already carved out some pretty successful niches for themselves using horn sections within a band. So by 1972, that concept of a horn section was, as I said, acceptable and popular, and all of those horns and so many more were done in such a cool and unique and personal way that each one of those sounds and those artists and those styles that I just mentioned, they all sounded unique. All of those little styles managed to utilize horns in a way that was completely like a signature, like a trademark, right? They're not identical. They all have a unique horn sound, whether it's in the actual playing, the performances, or the arrangements, or how they were used. etc. Right? Very unique. There's plenty of room in God's big music room for some pretty cool horn sounds. And by 1972, I thought I'd pretty much heard all of them, all of those, and just about anything that could be done with a horn section. But boy, was I ever wrong, because when these guys rolled out of Oakland, California, there in 1972, man, this was a whole nother thing. And I can't even tell you, I was thinking about this morning on my walk. I can't even tell you. It is so clear as a day to me. Probably the first 4 or 5 times that I heard this song, and I'm guessing I probably heard it first on the FM side before it became a hit and crossed over to the AM side. I'm guessing I heard the longer album version on the FM radio. This was a song, folks, that would absolutely stop me dead in my tracks. And it probably took me maybe 4 or 5 or 6 times of hearing this song as a 14-year-old before I just had this arrangement, this whole band sound, the vocals, the lyrics, the whole incredible sound just burned into my mind. And then I was at a point where I could actually hear it from a distance and be okay with it and just hear it because I knew what was coming up and I had it memorized because it had just been burned into my mind and into my soul. But the first several times before I got to that point, those first 3 or 4 times I heard this song, I remember clear as a day walking by my mother's stereo. My mother had this huge old Magnavox console stereo back there in the early 70s. That thing was built like a battleship. I wish I had it to this day. And it actually was not a bad sounding system. You could really get some pretty good sounds out of there. And I will just never forget hearing this the first few times, just walking by, doing whatever in the house, and my mom had the radio on, and hearing the first 30 seconds of this song was enough to just stop you dead in your tracks. And I would turn around and walk back over to the stereo and just sit there and listen to this song. And of course, this intro is just such a signature. It's so distinct, and there's never been a song like this in the history of timeless pop, rock, and soul. And there's certainly never been a sound like the one that these guys captured, especially there in the intro. It is such a monumental hook. The performances in this song are just ridiculous, and I'm going to give individual credit to all of the guys that contributed to this for Tower of Power. Because this was like a bomb going off in 1972. Wait till you hear this sound. On the lead vocals, and incredible lead vocals on this song, I might add, it is Rick Stevens. We have Skip Mesquite on the tenor saxophone. We have Emilio Castillo on the tenor saxophone and vocals. We have the great Greg Adams on the trumpet. We have the great Stephen Doc Kupka on baritone sax and vocals. We have Mick Gillette on trumpet and trombone and vocals. We have Willie James Fulton on guitar and vocals. The great David Garibaldi on drums. What an incredible drummer he is. The great Francis Rocco Prescia on bass, the legend Rocco. Brent Byers on congas and vocals, Jay Spell on the piano, and then we also have the Memphis Strings, arranged and conducted by Greg Adams of the band, on this particular song. So 11 guys in the band for this song, plus that string section, and 5 of them are horns. And there's the other unique thing. You know, most of those horn sections that I named there back in the day, you might have had anywhere from 2 to 3 to maybe at most 4 horns in the band, in the brass section of a band, within a band. But here comes Tower of Power in 1972. And boy, that name is no joke. Tower of Power. It's like no shit. 5 horns. You get 2 trumpets, loud and proud, on the high end, 2 saxes right in the middle, and either a baritone sax or a trombone on the low end. And I just can't even tell you, folks, in 1972, just hearing this on my mom's freaking console stereo, this song would stop you dead in your tracks. No joke. And it has since gone on to become just an absolute classic. Like I said, there has never been a song like this. Tower Power takes You're Still a Young Man up to only number 29 on the pop chart and number 24 on the R&B chart back in the summer of 72. But I'll tell you what, the chart positions of this song has absolutely zero meaning or impact in my mind, at least, because this is all about just the influence and just the uniqueness and a sound. They just immediately carved out a sound all of their own on this song, and of course went on to do so for so many decades in their long career, and they're still going. Tower Power, right? But from 1972, this is where it started, and this is the one that stopped me dead in my tracks every single time. And it is the incredible Tower of Power, and You're Still a Young Man.
Together, I get you.
in his hand just to love you. Just to get up next to you and hold you. Oh, baby. You say that I'm wasting my time. Well, it's my time, baby. It's you. Come on. Come on. You better listen to me. Saying I'm loving you. Yeah. Come on. Come on. Come on. Tell her. Tell her. Come on. Just to hold you. Just to squeeze you. Come on. I want to do it just next to you and please you, baby. You did what I'm coming for. Folks, do you understand? Summer of 1972, one song. It took one song, this record, for this band of guys, one song on the radio, for these guys, Tower of Power, to basically create an entire career. I mean, of course, they went on to do, other great stuff, right? I mean, this wasn't even their biggest hit. I'm not saying this is the highest point of their career, but I'm saying this first song, this first shot out the gate was so incredible that it immediately established them as a viable act. It established them as a concert draw. It established them as songwriters. It established them as arrangers and performers. I mean, just virtuoso. If I played that back and just slowed it down or stopped it 100 times, I mean, there is just so many virtuoso musical moments across the board with the entire band. I mean, the rhythm section is just absurd when the horns come in and out, that string arrangement with the Memphis strings. And Tower Power, just bringing all of that East Bay grease. There have been so many great horn sections, so many great horn concepts in popular music in my lifetime. And one song from Tower Power there in 1972 put them on the map. And even though musically you can draw a straight line, I think, from the overwhelming influence of James Brown, the horn sections from James Brown and his Fabulous Flames, those bands over the years, you can draw a straight line in terms of influence from James Brown right out to Oakland to Tower of Power in terms of influence. But that's where it ends, because Tower Power took some of those ideas and concepts and basic sounds from that James Brown horn section and just put all of that grease on top. And you talk about virtuoso musicians in this band. It's one guy after the other. And they just planted the freaking flag there in 1972. Can you hear? That is a song that would just stop me. And as a teenager, and I already knew and loved all this other stuff. You guys know, I was way, way into Chicago and way into all that soul that had those horns. I loved brass, okay? And I really thought, okay, I've kind of got a handle on all the cool ways that brass horn sections can be used in popular music, whether it's pop, rock, or soul, right? Or even jazz, as I said. But for Tower of Power to just come out with the 5-piece section and just blow the freaking roof off, and it's backed up by a stone cold legendary rhythm section and vocals out of this world, passionate vocal performance of a lifetime by Rick Stevens. And of course, a lot of people mistakenly believe that that was Lenny Williams who joined Tower of Power the following year and sang their biggest hit of all, So Very Hard to Go. The great Lenny Williams, what a great vocalist he is as well. And a lot of people mistakenly think that this was Lenny Williams on You're Still a Young Man, but it was not. It was, in fact, as I said, Rick Stevens giving a passionate vocal performance for the ages. that incredible band. And I could play this freaking song back 3 times and in a row, and it kills me every single time. That is how good Tower of Power was and is, and man, still growing strong, throwing down the gauntlet. Nobody ever came up and played that rock and soul and funk, and man, those guys. And what a horn sound. They immediately established that Tower of Power horn sound, the uniqueness of that sound with this album. And of course, this is also the album with Down to the Nightclub. And it just kept getting funkier and funkier for Tower of Power. After that, of course, What Is Hip and Soul Vaccination and So Very Hard to Go. And you just don't change horses in the middle of the stream. One song after another for these guys. Absolute stone cold funk legends. But man, I can't even tell you, just as a teenager, having my ears just blown and my mind blown, hearing the uniqueness of this horn sound and that rhythm section, and to hear brass, yet another epic and legendary variation of how in the hands of genius musicians, those horns can sound so cool and so distinct and so just create an instant identity. And that's what these brothers did in a big, big way and have been doing ever since, right? The Tower of Power horns, right up there on the tip-top Mount Rushmore of great horn sections. Zero argument about that. See you in the next one. We're going to chill out on some really cool laid-back 70s stuff on the next one. Another nice soulful groove. See you soon. Tower of freaking Power, man. No joke. No joke, those guys.